Well, personally, I've changed a lot, and I feel like I've grown a lot as an individual. I guess I used to feel trapped by certain things, in my, based on my own past, based on my own life, and based on the choices that I've made and things that I've experienced. Like I said, I've been making this shift to like mental clarity. I've had this sort of like craving for some sort of way to, I guess, enhance myself. You know what I mean? Rather than being, for me, I felt like something was affecting me, affecting my mental state. It was affecting, I guess, I don't know. It was limiting me. And so my change has come more mentally than it has anything. I think it's fairly common, but on the album, I feel more confident and comfortable because I'm now very, very aware of the fact that I'm telling everybody to sort of fuck off and move, and doing my own thing is really what I'm about.
Greetings, mates. Welcome to episode 174 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, Michael of Friedenstall and I are chopping it up about his new record, Sonic Devotion to Darkness, which received a rave review by yours truly on this very podcast last week. We spoke about the album, we spoke about a bunch of pretty personal and philosophical things as well, but great catching up with him as always. This is his third appearance on the show. It was most certainly not going to be his last. Before we get to that, though, the UK blackened thrash purveyors, Damim, have just released a new single called World Turned Hell through Church Road Records. For those of you who are the longest-serving members of the Into the Necrosphere Legion, you will know that Nathaniel Underwood of Damim was my second ever guest, and so it stands to reason that when they drop new music, I need to give you guys a taste. So if you haven't had a chance to hear the new single yet, that is about to change right now. Here is Damim with World Turned Hell.
September
World Turned Hell by Damim, the new single by one of the UK's, in my opinion, most underrated blackened thrash exports. I believe there is an EP in the works, and I can also confirm that Nathaniel Underwood and I have been talking about doing another episode of the podcast together, which I think is going to be really fun. If you haven't heard their previous record, A Fine Game of Nil, make sure you check that out. It is absolutely sensational, and again, from my perspective, I think it was really overlooked the year that it was released. But great to hear they are doing new music, and looking forward to whatever comes next, especially off the strength of the single. My friends, if you're new to the podcast, make sure that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Follow me on social media, and also check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store if you want to really show your love and support for the podcast. And then I actually have a very special request this week. If you haven't done so yet, and the spirit moves you to do so, then please do give me a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That really, really helps the show. Help me hijack big tech's algorithms. Yeah, I've got, I think I'm on 68 reviews on Spotify so far, so let's see if we can get that up to 100. But really appreciate it if you guys would do that. And of course, one of the things that I would also massively appreciate is if you follow my fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse. Every Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. And every Wednesday, my good friend and brother, Sensei Mike Hill, brings you his long-standing podcast, Everything Went Black. He is joined by a cast of characters that invariably includes everybody from musicians through to MMA fighters through to fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse. He's recently been on a bit of a tear with the great Ralph Schmidt of Ulthar, who himself is a horseman. So make sure if you haven't checked out some of their recent episodes that you do, and make sure that you tune in every Wednesday for Everything Went Black. So too every Thursday for Necromaniacs, the best podcast of the week as far as I'm concerned. That features a return by Mike Hill. Also, he is joined by Mike Scandado and Jeff Kashid. They review horror movies, old and new. Super entertaining, super enjoyable, and it'll set you up for a viewing schedule for the weekend. And then every Sunday, of course, make sure that you make time on the Sabbath day, on the Lord's Day, for the Reverend Carl Hikaro, who brings you another installment of the Soul Knox podcast. I have featured on Cole's podcast. Many of the other horsemen have done also, as well as horsemen adjacent, honorary horsemen like Dave Razor Eater Metal Berardi. So make sure you check out that podcast, and follow us and join us in the war, in the battle against shit content. Coming up later on in the show, I'm going to be doing another fully throated installment of the weekly news rant. Lots to talk about this week, including a new Immortal single, and then the somewhat sad and baffling news about Trey Azagtoth collapsing on stage. We're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about all sorts of spicy topics, so stick around for that. No reviews this week, simply because I've not had a chance to really listen to anything in great detail, but I'll do a proper review roundup next week. And then also next week, my guest is going to be Justin Coleman of Krigsgrav. I spoke about their new single last week, and he and I recorded a really, really fun episode this past week. I had a bout of sinusitis, so I'll warn you right now, I was coughing and sputtering like an imbecile throughout the chat, but that shouldn't take away, it shouldn't detract from the enjoyment. Either way, my friends, I want you right now to pour yourself a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy another conversation with my good friend Michael of Friedenstall. Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And is that a congratulations on a fantastic fourth record gift to yourself, or is that what was the reason for buying that?
Well,
actually, and also because I obviously saw the body, but what is the guitar? What's the brand and stuff like that?
It's a Harley Benton
guitar.
So that is a German company.
Yeah.
I used to play. I guess I'm just saying it now, but I used to solely play Jackson guitars.
Yeah.
And then that black guitar back there, I heard a whole bunch about Harley Benton, and this guy locally was looking to sell one, and I offered him a trade for some old speakers from a cabinet, and he said sure. So I was just like, screw it, I'll try the Harley Benton, and then I got hooked, and now I love them, and that's just what I'm obsessed with. So it's sort of more just because I've never had a guitar with 3 pickups, so in a row. So, yeah.
Well, that's so. I mean, I pointed that out on the review that I did for Sonic Devotion to Darkness. Like I don't know whether it was a case of, or whether it was a product of how the guitars were like mic'd up in the studio, how you played them, but the way they were captured, there's such a heartfelt element to what to the playing. I don't know what other word to ascribe to it. Like,
Okay.
in the way that you're kind of chugging and stuff like that. There's just something very kind of emotional about it, like in the best possible way. Like there's, I think that probably the what I'm trying to convey is there's like a feeling of love when I hear you play the guitar in amongst the hate.
Yeah. I mean, I love to hate. How about that? No, I'm kidding.
Enjoying spreading the hate.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I spent a lot of time working on the guitar tone. After Silence is Eternal, I was unsatisfied with some of the tone that I heard on there. It sort of felt flat to me, and so I wanted to sort of just more so delve into the whole gear worship sort of thing and just figure stuff out more along the lines of what I've been wanting to hear. So on the album, there's a variety of pickups used, variety of guitars used, and it just happened to turn out like it did. So I'm very happy about that.
So tell me, I mean, let's just talk first and foremost about just the response to Sonic Devotion to Darkness, just from having done the review on my podcast and seeing people's response. Like there's definitely a lot of positive sentiment behind this record. I got that same impression looking at, the social media response when you were posting about the album when it was coming out, looking at some of the response to stuff that people were writing when you put out the singles. It definitely feels like there's more buzz, more hype around this record than there was with Silence is Eternal, which would make sense too, because I mean, you've been building up to this. Right. But how have you experienced the reception to it so far?
Well, my initial experience was I think that some of the fans, or listeners, I should say, when the singles came out, they were sort of, I wouldn't say surprised or confused, but more so, okay, maybe like pleasantly surprised that this, I got a little bit of information mentioning that it sounds different than the old Vredensdal, but it's still Vredensdal nonetheless. Yeah. And so I think at first maybe, coming off of Silence is Eternal, you may not be expecting exactly what you hear when you hear The Eye in the Well, which is sort of has this brightness to it. But I feel like after a week or two, I think people started to sort of understand where things were going, that it was starting to open up as far as sound and things like that. So the way that I took it was, this is where I'm going, and I really think that people, this is what they want to hear from Vredensdal, whether it's my choice, to give it to them or not. I'm doing it, but it also is the right path, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
So the reaction has been positive as far as I know. I've gotten no bad remarks as far as I know, at least to my face anyway.
Well, I mean, I having looked at some of the reviews are all positive. I liked Eye in the Well from the second that I heard it, and you are right. I mean, I think when you hear that, you definitely sound, I mean, as kind of an introduction to the new record, you sound instantly comfortable, and like you're kind of hitting your stride. And it's interesting because you can hear when an artist does that, right? Any band, any musician, when they're playing the music they're happiest and most comfortable playing, it comes out on the recording. It comes out if you see them live. It's definitely not something that you can. I think no amount of studio trickery can mask that.
Right, that's true. I definitely agree with that. And there has been a sort of shift, I guess you can say, in my mentality since the last record, and I think that it's very well displayed on this one. While the album is about sort of the darkness, it's also sort of about, the contrast and the balance of both. So I think you can hear it and feel both sometimes, opposing, but also at the same time. And that's sort of my thing, I guess, the contrast, the being able to see outside, being outside of the box and being able to see in it, and vice versa type of thing.
Mm. And so when you talk about a shift in mentality, can you bring that to life a bit more?
Yeah, sure. Well, personally, I've changed a lot, and I feel like I've grown a lot as an individual. I guess I used to feel trapped by certain things, in my, based on my own past, based on my own life, and based on the choices that I've made and things that I've experienced, just like any other person.
What things?
Well, I've quit drinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. You're all right with me sitting here drinking wine?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all right.
All right.
It's been a process for me, because during the album and intermittently afterwards and whatnot, I was drinking, but also I've sort of, like I said, I've been making this shift to like mental clarity. I've had this sort of like craving for some sort of way to, I guess, enhance myself. You know what I mean? Rather than being, for me, I felt like something was affecting me, affecting my mental state. It was affecting, I guess, I don't know. It was limiting me. And so my change has come more mentally than it has anything. I think it's fairly common, but on the album, I feel more confident and comfortable because I'm now very, very aware of the fact that I'm telling everybody to sort of fuck off and move, and doing my own thing is really what I'm about. And I can say it, but if I'm not doing it, if it's not coming through in the music, if Vredensdal just sounds like every other black metal band, then I'm screwing it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's sort of where it's come from. I've sort of shaken off the unnecessary things, got rid of the cobwebs. I kicked my own ass, and now here I am, fully aware.
What was the catalyst to get, or to make you stop drinking? Did you feel like it was? I mean, not to pry too much, but I mean, were you drinking too much? Was it a case of just you kind of felt that it was surplus to requirement in your life?
I've had times in the past where I was drinking too much.
Yeah.
More recently, I was very regulated. I had a certain amount that I was having a certain amount of times a week, and it was very just normal. It wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't really, it didn't feel like it was inhibiting until I decided to take a break. And then I realized it was like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just like the light shone on in my mind. And then here I am, and I feel so much more now. I feel like I can hear more, taste and smell more. I feel like there's something that I'm missing when I'm not fully, conscious. And I've looked into a lot of the science behind, alcohol, sort of, even like marijuana and just simple things like caffeine as well. I don't do drugs, so whatever. But now that I've taken this step and sort of becoming very, I guess you could say, clean, I that gives me a confidence because I'm choosing it. You know what I mean? And so that's sort of where I am. I take a lot of my philosophy base inspiration from like the Satanic Bible written by Anton LaVey. I've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But it's also more than just that. It's a base. So I build upon that. And I've just been able to really work on enhancing my mental space by having control. But I'm not having control because I'm holding on to things and telling them where to go. I'm having control by being adaptable, which I believe is actually stronger than being able to control everything, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost it reminds me of a saying, and I think the saying is, I'm actually going to look it up because So the Jocko Willink book, Discipline Equals Freedom. It kind of that saying popped into my mind when you were talking about that. I mean, it's a bit like, so I mean, I can relate maybe to a degree on the drinking. Obviously, I'm having wine now, but I mean, I never have more than a glass of wine, and I don't drink really anything other than wine. In the summer, I have a couple of beers, but nothing crazy. The last time I was like, next level drunk was about, I'd say maybe 8 years ago. And I said to myself, this is the fucking last time. I never want to feel like this ever again. I hate the feeling of being hungover so much that for me, it's not worth the pleasure I get out of being drunk in fact, I don't even like the feeling of being drunk. I just like the taste of wine. And to me, at the end of the day, I like having it. But I would say in sort of 2016, 2017, it was very randomly, I have this ritual where I'll watch an episode of something before I go to bed. I was watching Mad Men, and if you watch Mad Men, they drink like fucking crazy in that show.
I've been watching Peaky Blinders. It's the same way.
It kind of just prompts you to keep your habit becomes a little worse. I noticed by season 2, it's like it's not 1 glass of wine anymore. Now it's 2, and then by season 3, it's like now it's 3, and then I was starting to finish a bottle a night, and it's like, okay, this is fucked up. I need to pull the reins back on that. And when I ditched that and I got to a place where I was a lot more disciplined with how I was approaching that. I mean, again, my mental clarity, my performance at work, my day-to-day life was just exponentially better than it was previously. So there's definitely something to that discipline in whatever form that discipline comes, right? I know people that are doing my friend Cheyenne is doing like 8-minute ice baths every day, in addition to going to the gym. The gym for me is definitely an anchor. But I think I think in order to perform, and especially when you're juggling multiple stuff in your life, like I know you're juggling a job, the band, and probably a bunch of other things. In order to make all of that stuff work and not go off the rails and die of stress, you have to have that degree of discipline, and you have to have that focus and that mental clarity.
Yeah, definitely. That book title reminds me of 1984, the book 1984.
Yeah,
slavery is freedom, and all that stuff. It doesn't have to be for everybody. I'm not somebody who's thinks that my example or I'm setting the example for others to follow along. That has nothing to do with. That's not in my realm of desire or whatever. I'm just doing it for myself because I feel like that's what I need.
Yeah.
I really believe that we should. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say we, but I believe that it's good to judge a person by their merits, as an individual. You know what I mean, rather than their surroundings and whatnot. So you can drink wine and do it, whatever it is that you want to do, so long as you're respecting me. You see what I'm trying to say? Yeah, it's just the
100%.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at, and it's helped me a lot. And finishing Sonic Devotion to Darkness and getting it out there really, like I said, opened up some place in my mind as far as music goes. And the music that I'm writing and working on now for the future is going to be exponentially more flavored and interesting, I believe.
Well, so I think it's interesting that you point out the confidence, because I know you listened to the review that I did, and that's one of the things that I pointed out. It's like that's the thing that's most striking to me, and I sense checked myself again ahead of us speaking today by listening to Sonic Devotion to Darkness and then going back to the Tyrant Shade and listening to that record straight after, and it's night and day. The Tyrant Shade is a great record, but it's I wouldn't say it's the sound of somebody finding their feet necessarily, but there's certainly kind of a rawness and almost a it's not quite fully formed, especially when held against Sonic Devotion to Darkness.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've been learning to sort of focus, you know what I mean, as far as the album goes. I've always been a big fan of the album and creating the album and hearing albums that are really well thought out. And for me at the time, the Tyrant Shade, that was what I felt, was the best that I could offer. and looking back, of course, you know, I still love it, but I also can recognize that sort of it kind of has that loose cannon appeal. You know what I mean?
It does, yeah.
There's just a lot going on sort of constantly for 55 minutes, and then by the time you're at the end, you're like, you know. But the I think that what shines through with the Tyrant Shade specifically in connection to this album is I do believe that I understand where the limit is of adding variety, and then I'm learning now how to sort of enhance that very specifically, sort of like a tight grouping. You know what I mean? So that's sort of what I'm working on, and yeah, I still love the Tyrant Shade. So still, it's probably still my favorite Vredensdal album.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I would have thought the new record would have.
Well, I mean, sure, yeah, of course, it's my favorite, but I'm trying to say, like, when I go back to the original feeling that I had, you know what I mean? That I sort of I always go back to that one. Sorry, I keep.
Well, that was your breakthrough. That was the first time you got featured on Into the Necrosphere was thanks to that record.
Oh yeah,
thanks to Kelly as well, because she introduced me to that album.
Oh right, yeah, definitely. Well, cheers to you for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this is visit number 3 to Mean Street Studios, and it's also interesting. You know, as you're talking about the change in mentality and stuff like that, I'd be curious to check out the first conversation that you and I had and hold it up to this one, because it feels to me, and I say this as somebody who's has a friendly affinity for you, but you feel that just much more relaxed. You feel like a different person, quite honestly. It's like you've been on a long holiday. You come back feeling enlightened and refreshed.
Yeah, that's definitely how I feel. And I was carrying a lot of shit with me constantly every single day. And yeah, it was coming out in the music, and things were dark and stuff like that, and they still are, but they're dark in a different way. They're dark because rather than being consumed by the darkness, more so I am in league with it, if that makes sense. Rather, it's a conscious choice to present yourself a certain way rather than become lost in something. And it's sort of also like when people talk about having demons, I think it's funny because it's a metaphor for negative habits or traits, let's say, right? I feel like that by saying, every day I got to deal with my demons and whatnot, that's telling yourself that you're incapable of being in control of those things. And so yeah. I'm trying to reverse that. I've been working on reversing that sort of thing, rather embracing and indulging in the dark things that I believe are necessary for my continual growth as an individual. And so from the Tyrant Shade moving forward, I've been on these ups and downs with like sort of philosophical thinking and figuring out what music I really like and stuff like that. Like you should have seen me after Silence is Eternal. I was gonna quit and like throw everything out. Yeah, I was ready to like throw it all out. And I started to make these changes and stuff like that, and I don't know. And here I am now, but I feel like that's because I chose, rather than to play the victim, sort of turn it into a tool type of thing. So.
So what made you want to throw things out? And then, because again, Silence is Eternal, we I think to the untrained ear, it might sound like we're dumping on it because we compare it constantly to Sonic Devotion, but it's a great record. Again, you were on the show talking about the album. I loved it. I thought it was excellent.
It's good. It has its moments.
But yeah, I mean, after an album like that was well received and was a good step up for you musically, what would have been the driver for you to say, I've had it with this music malarkey and I'm hanging up the guitar?
Well, I've been making music for many more years than since before Vredensdal. Since my teens, I've been in a variety of bands, playing a variety of different styles of music, and metal wasn't my original genre. So I have a thing in my mind where I feel like sometimes I'm not creating the music that is original to my essence, or whatever you want to call it. And so for a while I I was very conflicted with my decision to place my life into a world of people that I oftentimes, feel like is just a giant herd. So basically, once I sort of got over that hump, and I realized that part of the reason why Vredensdal is what it is because I can take those outward influences and sort of weave them into the sound that I perceive as black metal. And I think that once I figured out, like I can do that and it doesn't matter. There's really no standard. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I can put out a black metal album with, apparently people can put out black metal albums with saxophone and accordion and, like screeching.
Oh, that's obviously verboten on Into the Necrosphere, but you can do that if you want.
but you see what I'm saying? And I think to myself, if these people can go out and dance around looking like these type of, jesters, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, well, then I can definitely do whatever I want. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's just where I sort of took things and how I feel.
I mean, the thing for me, I've got my news rant that I do at the end of every show, and I think many people that hear that probably think I'm very opinionated, and if they're in a band that I happen to not like and I've said some mean things about, they'll also think I'm a dickhead. But I mean, the great thing about black metal in particular, one, I think it affords you an awful lot of creative freedom, but I think in part it affords you all that creative freedom because, frankly, anyone who's a student of the genre and listens to a lot of bands, playing in that style, if they don't like a certain style of music, like in my case, I don't like the saxophone stuff. I don't like things that sound a bit sickly and sweet. So a band like White Ward doesn't appeal to me. Same. But it doesn't really have to be a big deal. It's not like the old days where you literally they wanted to murder people for playing music that colored outside the lines of a certain thing. Because I just go on to something else. I mean, there's so many bands to listen to. There's at least 3 or 4 records every single week that gets released that would be of interest if I had the time to listen to it. The cream rises to the top for me, and everybody's cream, their flavor of cream differs depending on who they are.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, really, what it is the fact that there's these people that want to create music with all these outward influences and call it black metal when they're missing the metal aspect. It turns into this sort of open-ended, wind and drone and humming and sort of this thing. It's this wall of noise. It's almost like shoegaze at times, and I really feel like, okay, you can do the blast beats and scream and wear corpse paint or whatever, but that's not, what I'm trying to say. So that's how I feel. I just feel like they're missing the metal aspect. Blah blah blah. So
they're also missing, in my view, the anger aspect of it. Like black metal is very aggressive music. It always has been. It was, you go back to the Norwegian masters, the early Burzum, Mayhem, Emperor, Satyricon records, Immortal as well. They're violent, angry records. There's nothing peaceful and nice about them. And I've said it many times before. The best quote I ever heard was from Morgan from Marduk when he was saying, black metal has to be a fist in the face of God. There has to be that degree of rebellion, and there has to be that degree of aggression present in black metal. If it's not there, then to me it's it becomes like Death Heaven. I mean, that's just not. I don't see how anyone could even closely associate that band with black metal. I don't. Not that I'm a genre elitist. Again, if you want to listen to Death Heaven, listen to Death Heaven. I don't give a shit. But it's just not that I wouldn't regard that as black metal. It's certainly not my style of black metal to listen to. So. Yeah. And in part, I hate it because of that lack of aggression. And also major chords in black metal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like drinking wine. If you want to do it, go ahead.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with me really, and I'm just here to do my own thing. And if people can get it, cool. If not, cool.
Well, it's funny you mentioned as well about people not stopping drinking. You're not the first person who I've had the faux pas of sipping a glass of wine, and then the guy goes, "Oh yeah, I recently stopped drinking." I had Greg McIntosh from Paradise Lost on the show about 6-7 months ago. Same deal with him. My friend Cheyenne of Drivax, he no longer drinks. So this definitely seems to be a for a genre that was well known in the 80s and the 90s for people taking drugs and getting liquored up. There's a lot of folks that are turning their back on their wayward past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for some people, maybe they just see it as wearing having a crutch when your legs are working just fine.
Yeah. In terms of the as far as the healthier living and stuff like that is concerned, is there anything else that you've adopted outside of staying off the booze that you have found helpful?
I guess probably just being more honest with myself, but I think that's just sort of part of everyday. I mean, should be part of everyday life. Nothing specific that I can think of, like as far as I don't know, believing in new things or wearing different clothes.
Yeah,
I'm the same person. I've just found myself, and I think that's what maybe that's what you're trying to say on the Sonic Devotion album, is that it's sort of finally coming into maybe the sound, the Vredensdal sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like the last three was like sort of hashing it all together and figuring it out. Sort of what do you call it? What's the word?
Well, I think the way I explained it was it sounds like you found yourself, right? You properly found your feet, and you sound a lot more comfortable in your own skin than you did previously. The nice thing about it is what that translates to is music that has that American black metal vibe to it. Like I said with the intro, for example, even though the intro is, I mean, it's just an intro ultimately, it kind of reminds me of the same feeling I get listening to something like Cobalt. Especially Gin and Slow Death. There's that like that warm American black metal feeling to it. But then elsewhere on the record, there's clearly a lot of love for Norwegian black metal, but I think the way that it all comes together on this record feels so much more natural and just so much more cohesive. Like all the stuff that you like, all the influences that have made you the musician that you are, they just seem to work in lockstep with each other far more so on this record than they've done on anything else that you've produced.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that. I think that the intro, I did notice that a couple people called the intro pointless, but I think the funny part is that while it doesn't necessarily fit with the song that's coming on next, the purpose of that intro was just to give you a bass so that second song can just come in loud. That was the point. That the whole point. It's not musically innovative. The album's not supposed to be life-changing. It's just supposed to be good. You know what I mean? It's just supposed to be something that you can put on and enjoy, not have to think about, not have to constantly feel. You're not worried about your ego when you're listening to the album. You're just enjoying it. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's a little bit lost in some of the more common records lately. With each album, they're trying to pull you down into what their genre is. So if you're listening to depressive, you have to feel depressed in order to listen to this. If you're going to listen to atmospheric music, well, then you better be on a walk out in the woods. Like, where's the music that you can just throw on and just jam to? You know what I mean? That's where I'm coming from. And I think that has a lot to do with like my rock and roll background, punk rock, stuff like that. That all comes from that place of just wanting to get that feeling, the groove. You know what I mean? So that's sort of where I'm sort of headed, but not without its plentiful darkness.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I recall you mentioning actually when we first spoke your background being in punk. Like, what? Talk to me a little bit more about that. Like, you've been in multiple punk bands. Where did that kind of? I guess how did that interest play out, and then how did that eventually evolve into you getting into black metal?
I wasn't necessarily in punk bands. So I'll try to make a long story short. We've mentioned previously, I grew up in a religious home. I wasn't allowed to listen to secular music. So I had to do what I could at the time to get into the heavier genres on my own. So while I was in high school, I made a couple of friends, and we would occasionally mess around, and they would show me stuff. But I wasn't allowed to have the CDs or wear the T-shirts and stuff like that. So that really, that really just pushed me to want it more, right? So by the time I joined the military at 17, I got back when I was 21. Around that time, very specifically, is when I just dove as much as I could into as much music as I, without boundaries. I did listen to tons of punk. My cousins, because I grew up in Southern California, so we were skate punk sort of era in like the early 2000s and stuff like that. So I was really into that style of band music and stuff, and that sort of life area. But when I was 20, I just, like I said, I just opened the Pandora's box and I just dove right in. And then just from there, I took everything that I had previously, which was like from my parents, specifically my dad in like the 70s, rock and roll, like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, you know what I'm trying to say? And then I took all that bass, and then I've just sort of over time, I've just worked on understanding, like, why are these people making this sort of music? Why does it appeal to them? Why does punk rock appeal to this group of people? And why does, I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say? And so when I got to my time and I was just able to just dive right in, I was just basically like floating in a pool of just sound and just taking it all in and just saying, well, I can make it fit. So I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put that there. And I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. What I'm more curious about, because I went through something similar. I actually spoke about it in the podcast a couple of weeks ago. How strict were your parents on what you could and couldn't listen to? Like, did they, would they come into your room and go through your stuff? Like to what extent was that strictness applied?
Well, anything that was visibly dark, anything that had parental advisory on it, I wasn't allowed to have. If I could get away with it, not saying any bad words and it having a cover that's somehow decent, it's fine. If the name didn't sound ominous, like I remember one time, this is, it's not too long ago, but when that band Wolfmother came out, right? Do you remember that band Wolfmother? I was like, hey, I told my dad about it because he likes 70s rock and roll and stuff like that. I was like, hey, check out this band Wolfmother. They're kind of like a throwback to like Black Sabbath and whatever. And he was like, he listened to one song and said something along the lines of, if this is a satanic band, are you going to stop listening to it? I was like, it's Wolfmother. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's to the point where on the surface, it's very surface level. So anything that sort of came across as blasphemous or sort of secular or not focusing on God and things like that, I wasn't allowed to listen to it. And I specifically remember, here's a funny thing. I specifically remember going with my mom to a Christian bookstore, and I love music, so I just went straight to the CDs. And in the CDs, in the old CD stores, like Virgin Records even, you could go and put the headphones on and just sample one, which, everybody misses that. But even in this Christian bookstore, there was this album, and I was looking through all the darkest metal albums that I could find, like all the heaviest stuff. I thought, these guys, they believe in God, but there's got to be something inside of them that says, oh, what the fuck? Like, I'm pissed off. And you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you can't just make this music without having those feelings of something. Something is being pent up. Something is being blocked. That's what I thought. And so I came across this band. It's actually a Norwegian band, X-Toll, which is a Christian. I know
X-Toll.
Yeah, and they had this album, Undeceived, and that album blew my mind. It's like progressive. It's black metal. It's thrash metal. It's Christian and all that, but like it's wildly inventive and like natural sounding. I love that album, so I bought that. I told my mom, "Oh, don't worry, it's a Christian band. Just because the guy's on the front going like this and stuff like that doesn't mean anything. It's in a Christian store. It's totally fine." She was like, "I guess I can't say anything." So I bought the album. I listened to it, and then it was, and then again, like I said, all this stuff transported forward. So by the time I got out of the military and stuff like that, I just was like, what is the music that I used to listen to? And I was trying to figure it all out. I remember the band X-Toll, and then I realized there's a connective band, Antestor, which is also another Christian band. But Hellhammer played drums on that album, ironically. And then I was like, who's Hellhammer? Why is he so famous? Boom, there's Mayhem.
Yeah.
And then, next thing
I
you
was
know.
about to say that's when the doors just blow wide
Yeah, and
open.
that's when I was like, ah. And so, it was a really long, complicated process that probably would have you laughing at me at times if I expressed to you the kind of music that I was really into at one point, or
No, not at all, actually. I mean, because I think my story is quite similar. That's why I'm always fascinated to hear other people who went through the same thing. I mean, my parents were. I mean, they were for the most part great parents. I mean, there's no.
right. Same here.
I'm not gonna pretend that I was this abused kid. They, when it came to music, my mom, was reasonably indulgent of me, playing her music and saying, "Oh, listen, I know you don't like the vocals, but listen how well they play guitar or whatever." She's a music teacher, so you always I always try to, I think, subconsciously seek some sort of validation from her. My dad would go through these fits and starts where every so often I would have to take down all of my posters and all of my flags. A couple of times I had to go and burn all of it. The two things that I remember standing out most, one was I was about, I think, 11 years old, 11 or 12. And there's a very famous Guns N' Roses show that was recorded in Paris. They had it on TV in South Africa, and at that point, getting a live show on TV of any band was rare, let alone a band like Guns N' Roses. I was a massive Guns N' Roses fan, so I've been hugely looking forward to it. And they screened it at like 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, so my parents are in the living room with me watching it, and the show starts. And Axl is like in his boxer shorts, and he's like, running around, doing exactly what Axl does, running around on stage. And the first song they played is "It's So Easy." He's standing there, and the bit where he goes, "Why don't you just fuck off?" As soon as he said that, I was like, "Oh God, tonight is going to be shit."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that descended into a probably 2-hour sermon about how listening to this music is going to send me to hell and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
burn all my Guns N' Roses stuff and burn the Guns N' Roses flag that I had in my room. And then, over time, it would kind of creep back in the posters and the stuff.
Right, of course.
And yeah, and then there was another show where there was it was like some like variety show, but they had Metallica playing. And James had his wolf's head on, and for whatever reason, my dad thought that was a goat's head, therefore occultic. So Metallica flag had to be burned. I had this huge, like, life-size Metallica poster that I spent about probably 3 months pocket money on. That had to be burned. And I was absolutely incensed with them. I mean, the way I got around it is they seem to base most of their judgment over music on whether it was in this one particular book called Rock Music: The Right to Know, which in South Africa was all, every teacher had it, every Christian owned a copy. Yeah, so if it wasn't in there, then I could generally get away with it. So when it came to, like, Morbid Angel and Dear Side and stuff like that, so long as I didn't see any album covers or any pictures of the band with wearing upside down crosses and stuff like that, I was generally safe.
Nice.
But
Cool.
but the run up to discovering those bands, that was a bumpy road.
Well, I mean, Deicide and Guns N' Roses, it's a toss up. They're about the same. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, now, I mean, aside from the devil worship, well, actually, I mean, I don't actually think that they are Satanists, but I mean, Glenn is like a full blown Republican. So it's not a. I would imagine if my dad sat down to have a beer with Glenn and then he had a beer with Axl, and you polled him afterwards and you said, which of the two guys did you get on with best? I would have my money that he placed on very firmly on, this Glenn guy, not a bad dude.
You're probably right. Yeah, I could totally see that. I think in general most people would do the same.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, I think that it's interesting because it's all just again, it's all just where your mentality lies, and if you have fear in something, and you don't know why you fear it, then you're going to continue to fear that thing. You know what I mean? And I think that very specifically, black metal has that essence that sort of pulls you, makes you want to explore, what is this mystery, and that's sort of what is behind the whole thing. I personally think that black metal is the perfect hybrid genre of all the extreme metals, death metal, thrash metal, and even original like classic heavy metal and stuff like that. You can blend it all in there. You can sort of blend thrash metal with some death metal stuff, but it sort of loses its focus, I feel like. And same thing with death metal and like death and roll stuff. It's very good and I love it. Like Carcass, Entombed, love that stuff. It's huge on me. But I just feel like there's something about black metal where if you can find the right like the right triangle, like the right parts to sort of go over each other, then it has this like amazing hybrid effect, because even the original guys in black metal, which is like the Americans like Vaughn, which is, I wouldn't say they're the original, but you know what I mean? Vaughn, and then you have like Bathory, even Merciful Fate, they all have their roots in pre-extreme metal. You know what I mean? Everything is pre-extreme metal. And so their roots come from something else. And then, you have the 1990s and the wave of Norway and whatnot. Even still, Euronymous was very interested in experimental music, progressive sounds, stuff like that. They all love house music, you know what I mean? Like electronic music and stuff like that. It's there. It's just not necessarily presented. And I think that even today, a lot of people are missing that when they're creating their black metal albums. They're listening to black metal to create black metal.
Yeah.
So it sounds monotone. Like that's how I feel.
Yeah. I would completely agree with you, and I've it's something I've mentioned before, especially on the news rants. I think that you can hear a difference between somebody who loves music, like that Cameron Crowe movie Almost Famous, where right at the end of the film, this guy asks the main character asks this guy in this band he's been following around for the whole film, first question, what do you love about music? And his answer is, well, first of all, everything. And that to me, like when you're a genuine lover of music, and like you cross genres, you just love whatever gives you that dopamine hit, that warm feeling when you hear it. Like it feels like this is a song that speaks to me on a certain level. I think as an artist, that shows. I think of somebody like Shane Embury, or someone like Greg McIntosh, and if we think in black metal, I'm trying to think. I know, for example, the guys in Mayhem listen to a ton of different stuff, including 80s music, as you've just said now. Yeah. But that genuinely shows in your creative output. I think if you listen to one style of music, I would actually honestly question how truly creative you actually are. Because I don't think then that necessarily your musical expression is a creative one as much as it is you wanting to just fit in with a certain scene. And maybe I'm unfair saying that, but
No, I mean, I think that's fair, to be honest. I mean, anybody who does something to be recognized as a certain, as a specific title, then has to, maintain that title. And so if you come onto the scene as as an acrobat who can play the drums and also, juggle whatever while tying a cherry with his tongue all at the same time, then you're going to have to be able to perform that at all times. But at the same time, the thing is that once I noticed that some people, once they put themselves in a box, they tell themselves they can't leave or else they're not being true to the genre. But it's like, what about being true to yourself? What about creating music for yourself? Make it black metal, make it angry, make it evil, but make it for yourself and not necessarily to be so experimental or to be so brutal. Sometimes I feel like people just have left themselves for the hope of becoming, the next, spammed Instagram image of the guy who killed himself or something. You know what I mean? I just feel like people are leaving themselves behind. Maybe that's true. Maybe I'm full of shit, but that was my mentality when I came into it. And my mentality, even like, I expressed to you previously, I was fighting with myself, figuring out, what am I doing? Why am I making this music? it doesn't feel real to me. And so with Sonic Devotion to Darkness, I'm building Sonic Devotion to Darkness. To me, is the bridge. Science is Eternal, well, for you, is over here. Here's the bridge, and then over here is going to be that sound that I've like, oh, this is it. And maybe maybe they won't think it's black metal, but in my mind, just like with Merciful Fate, it has no blast beats. There's no screaming. They probably are using whatever type of gear. I'm not going to get into that, but what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to say is that it's still black and it's still metal. Why? Because they know how to put that together. They didn't try to make it black metal. They just were making metal. Blah 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 blah. So my goal is to continue to create music that is just like untouched by opinions and untouched by whatever this genre thing is. In my belief, is going to be metal. I know that for a fact. It's going to be black in its own way, and whether it sounds like what people believe black metal to be, does it have the right blast beats? Does it have the proper transition? Is it the perfect, the expected black metal thing? Is the production too good? Is it too bad? There's too many stipulations. There's no freedom in the creative process, because immediately if your thing starts off with a basic riff and a good production, oh, it's too sterile. It's not true black metal. Or if it's too raw, if it's too raw and the guy sounds like like you're strangling a cat in the background, it's either this is the truest black metal or this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. It's like, why are we judging it on like this microscopic level? Whatever happened to the creative? Just, hey, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's how I see it. I don't know if everybody sees it that way, and I'm probably being pig-headed or whatever. You know what I mean? But
I don't think so. Okay. I rant about it a lot on the show. I think there's a big difference between artists that play what is an authentic artistic expression to them, and artists that play to a brand, play to an expectation. And I gravitate far more to people that play to what I think is an authentic artistic expression for how they feel as artists at the time. If we move out of black metal, I've said this many times before, but Metallica as an example, when you listen to some of the stuff they do at that all within my hands acoustic show, they do some of those acoustic covers. You can hear they're way more comfortable playing that stuff than they are playing some of the proto metal that they attempt to do nowadays. And I would far rather they just bring out an album full of acoustic songs, because if that's what's authentic to them and that's where they feel happiest, that's the music that's going to sound best. That's what I always appreciated about Paradise Lost. They started off with Lost Paradise and Gothic, and then that was no longer something that was going to be there was no passion anymore to make Gothic Part 2, so they did Shades of God, which is also brilliant. Then they did Icon, which is also brilliant. And they're one of those bands that the only time I believe they've ever faltered slightly was on the last record, because you could hear on the last record they were probably leaning more towards doing that kind of goth metal kind of stuff that they wanted to do, rather than the death influenced Doom stuff. The death influenced Doom stuff ended up sounding very mechanical, whereas the rest of the record sounds absolutely sensational. So I think it's extremely important to do what you're feeling at the time, rather than going out and just playing what you think people want to hear or what you think fits into a certain genre. Slayer, another good example. I'd say beyond Divine Intervention, almost all of their records are records that are produced because they believe there's a certain expectation of what a Slayer record or a Slayer song should sound like. And so that's why you find that on pretty much every single album that they put out after Divine Intervention, there's one or two decent songs. The rest is all just shit. And no one is interested in hearing it live either.
Right. I totally get that. And I'm always on the lookout. Yeah, I'm always listening to a lot of variety of music. I'm always on the lookout for authentic stuff, I guess you could say. And it's not just in the black metal community, but because I'm so familiar with it, it's easy to talk about.
Yeah.
There are with the social media and all that stuff, there are literally millions of continuous spurts of artistry and this quote creativity in so many different mediums and whatnot. It's so hard to really even, just find something that really connects with you like it used to, I feel like. And so it's a really strange place, I think it's all strange.
Well, so what are you listening to right now that inspires you, or that you have that connection to?
Oh, let's see. Well, what have I been listening to? Well, I just bought a haul of records from a local shop, and they're all pre-1990s. So, like, I was listening to Jethro Tull, ZZ Top. What else? What else did I buy? Oh, I love this album by Gary Newman, The Pleasure Principle. Oh man!
So I saw them perform The Pleasure Principle live.
Really?
There's actually a live album that they recorded at the show that I was at. It's just The Pleasure Principle live. It was recorded at the O2 Academy in London. Dude, it was so fucking incredible to see them do that record live.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine that. Yeah, I just got lucky. Oh yeah, I've been listening to Ted Nugent, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love anything that just feels free. You know what I mean? Gary Newman, he wasn't trying to do that to be the most this and that guy. He was just making the music that meant something to him. And it's incredible. You can't touch. You can't compare Deicide drumming with the drummer and Gary Newman, but it's one and the same as long as the music comes through the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been listening to a lot of that stuff. I've been listening to a lot of Doom lately. I really love Doom. It's a big thing on me. Psychedelic music. I really love the band Earthless, Orange Goblin, stuff like that. I could go on and on, but yeah, lately I've just been mixing it around. Honestly, I've been really into listening to audiobooks.
What books are you listening to?
So just recently, like I mentioned, 1984, I listened to that one. Fahrenheit 451. I've done 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea recently. I did some Sherlock Holmes, Edgar Allan Poe, just all kinds of stuff. I'm just going backwards and trying to work my way forwards. I'm currently listening to The Count of Monte Cristo. That stuff has like serious culture that you can't get anywhere else. You know what I mean? There's a saying in one of the books, I can't remember which book it was specifically, but one guy mentioned that 99 or not 99, but something like it's loosely whatever. 90% of people won't experience the world or something like that. Wait, I got this all wrong, but something along the lines of, based on life and how the modern world works, more people don't get a chance to see the world as real as it could be through reading just books. You know what I'm trying to say? And that's where you can sort of experience many things. I listen to The Alchemist as well. And I love this podcast guy he's from England, Underwood and Flinch.
Well, I was just about to say he's from England. His name is Jackie Smith, and he does Into the Necrosphere.
Yes.
You didn't say that.
Oh, I'm always listening to that. Come on. You are keeping me up to date with the variety of musicians, one that I've never heard of, and also very interesting and relevant stuff currently, which I think is very cool because you have a really good connection with you're staying on top of it, and that's I can't do that. So great source.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. It is what it is.
But I was going to say with 1984, so you were listening to a prophecy of what the next 20 to 30 years of the human race is very likely to look like. I started playing the Animal Farm audiobook to my daughter on our car trips, because I have to drive 90 miles to go pick her up and 90 miles back. So then on the 90 miles back trip, I'll normally listen to something in the car that she's actually pretty into decent music as well. Like, she likes a lot of 80s goth music, and she likes she likes Sisters of Mercy. She likes Killing Joke very much. So she doesn't mind if I play that sort of stuff. But I played Animal Farm the other day, even though she's only 8. I was like, it's time for you to start getting educated in what's going on in the world.
I haven't read that one yet, so don't give me any spoilers.
Oh, dude, if you haven't read Animal Farm yet, it is fucking fantastic. I mean, it reads like a children's story, but it is such a deep book, and there's so much truth that gets spoken through the analogies that they use throughout the book. It's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I did listen to 1984 as well. What else have I been into? I listened to the Mark Lanigan autobiography twice. I really like that. I'm a very big fan of Mark Lanigan anyway.
Oh yeah, same here. I was a huge Screaming Trees fan, like beyond huge Screaming Trees fan in high school. I was all about the Screaming Trees. So.
Well, have you listened to his autobiography?
Mm-mm.
It's very good, very, very good. You're going to be quite sad listening to it, because I definitely, his death hit me a lot harder after I listened to the autobiography than before. I'm very fortunate. I actually got to see him play it was in the ULU chapel in London in 2016. So it was an acoustic show. He just had Duke Garwood there, I think, doing like an acoustic backing for him singing. But oh my God, if you want to talk about a guy whose voice just is on a completely different level. That's one of the only shows where I'm absolutely not ashamed to admit I had a lump in my throat pretty much for the entire show. Oh, it's just I even just thinking about it now, like I get, I'll get like goosebumps. I get completely emotional thinking about it. It was excellent. And I kind of, when I listened back to the book, you kind of, I kept having that memory in my mind of seeing him live. It's very sad that he passed on. I mean, he's a phenomenal singer, and he made such great music for such a long time in his life.
Yeah.
He was a guy who definitely seemed to kind of, speaking of people who did whatever the fuck they wanted to. I mean, he did like his electronic stuff. He did his like more acoustic, folky stuff. He just never seemed to sort of settle on any one thing. I'm also a very big fan of Queens of the Stone Age. I think the stuff he did with Queens of the Stone Age was incredible, especially Songs for the Deaf. I mean, that to me, I had Thomas from Morcon the other day, and he agreed. One of the fucking greatest albums ever recorded. It is so incredible. I was telling my daughter the other day as well. We were in the car, and I was playing it to her, and I said to her, I'll tell you why this is such a good album. I said, in 20 years' time, or 30 years' time, you're going to, in your case, 50 years' time, you're going to be sitting with your daughter listening to this music. You guys, there's a better chance of you sitting discovering Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age than there is of you sitting down with her and discovering anything that's coming out in pop music right now.
Fair enough.
I very, very deeply believe that.
And, I think that's a good example of somebody who's creating music while being fully in touch with their creative side. Like there's nothing preventing them from telling people to fuck off and I'm doing what I want. Like they're just he's just making the music at that time that just meant the most to him. And I really believe that's what makes good albums, is that there's something that's not telling you what to do. It's just there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really think like albums just like that, you know what I mean? And there's plenty of others, but I definitely agree with you on that. You can't match that sound. It's like the Doors. You just can't match that sound. What they were doing, they were just doing it. They weren't thinking about it. Just like Black Sabbath. I mean, they were thinking, but you know what I'm trying to say.
You said something earlier about music. It feels free, and I was ruminating on that when you said it. There's definitely something to be said about how great a record like Alive by Kiss makes you feel. Like I didn't live in the 70s and I wasn't there for that, but there is definitely like there's a feeling of being free, being being a free man, being your own man. Like I think there's a lot of freedom in the modern world, but maybe I'm drawn to that sort of stuff because I feel like that freedom is under threat.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I'm almost naturally gravitating towards that. Like I'll sometimes watch a movie from the 70s, and I'll often say to Paige, like, there's a big part of me that kind of wish I lived in the 60s or the 70s.
Oh yeah,
no internet, no anything. The music that was coming out was really exciting. There was really exciting movies coming out. there was like a creative freedom, and there was it just feels to me, and I might be completely wrong, someone who's older and maybe wiser may come and set me straight one day, but like I just feel like people had far more, they had more agency over what they did than what we necessarily have now. And I definitely feel like the trend in terms of that agency is getting worse. I don't feel like it's getting better.
Agree. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it, personally, I think a lot of it has to do with social media very specifically. I think that we're so aware of so many things. We're constantly shown so many things all the time. And like I said before, there's so many mediums of creativity continuously being put out. And nowadays, the only way to be recognized is to have a following and to have some sort of this and that. And the whole just being unique and being cool and being good just for what you are is sort of thrown out the window if you don't have the right PR team behind you. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter anymore, type of thing. And I definitely agree with you on that. And that's sort of how I feel.
I think it devalues people as well. It devalues and dehumanizes you because, as you say, you're judged by the size of your following. If your following isn't a certain size, then they just write you off, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
that person's nothing,
assume,
so we'll move on to the next thing.
And that's really frustrating to a lot of the people, like who feel something like inside of themselves to make something special, and maybe that doesn't sound brutal, but I mean, the brutal truth, you know what I mean? Like that's like the reality of it. What were they doing, back in those early black metal days? They were trying to create something special that nobody heard before because they felt it inside of themselves. I don't give a shit if it's kitties and rainbows or what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Regardless, each person is being drawn to something for some thing, some part of you is being drawn to something, and it's up to the individual to decide what they're going to do with it. If they're going to just put on the costume and play the role, then that's fine. Or if they're going to just take pieces of it and help them build something new, that's just as fine too. I'm not here to tell people they shouldn't listen to this or they should listen to this, so long as what should and shouldn't is dictated by themselves without an outside influence. That's the problem. I really feel.
Well, I don't think that I think the world, generally speaking, the herd, actually, because you used that word earlier. I think that's the right word. The herd can't think for themselves. It's just reality. I mean, you can say I'm being pessimistic about the human race. Maybe it is, and I've mentioned this before, but I think one of the things that has been detrimental to society is that as the role of religion has gotten diminished, it's created a vacuum, because unlike a lot of the atheists thought, a lot of the like the staunch atheists, like, I used to, for example, I remember watching Religulous by Bill Maher, which I still think is a great documentary, and it was really like eye-opening to me. It was an excellent documentary, and I remember watching it and going, the sooner religion gets out of society completely, the better. But what I have seen in current times is as the role of religion has gotten diminished, that human urge that 98% of the human race has, that weak urge that you need something to hold on to, you need some sort of guidance, you need a light in the darkness. A vacuum has been created, and now they're clutching onto all sorts of other shit. And the stuff that they're clutching onto now, I think, is even more toxic than religion. And that to me is a grave concern, because whether it's the religion of net zero, whether it's the religion of MAGA, whether it's the religion of anything, none of it's positive.
Yeah.
And none of it. And I mean, I'm an outcomes based man. So I think about what's the best possible outcome. I don't see a good outcome in either instance. And I don't see an outcome in any of the other myriad instances as well, where I see people following what I see as kind of almost the new Puritanism of our era.
Yeah, that is interesting. I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think I know I keep going back to it, but there's the subconscious part of people wants for something, wants to be connected to something, wants to feel like they're part of something.
Yeah.
And they at times it will jump to the first thing that we'll give them an emotional response, and then they can connect to that emotional response, and they want it again, and then you do it so much to the point where they realize I'm not feeling the emotion from it anymore, and then next thing you know, they're depressed and stuff like that. And even I've gone through that. I'm sure everybody's gone through that at some level, scope or whatever. That's why I personally subscribe to the realm of Satanism created by Anton LaVey, because it's not, there's no devil worship. It's not some sort of delusional belief in a higher power. It's something that, you're enjoying the parts of life that have, oftentimes been given the devil's name. And it's something that you can sort of, be proud of, because again, you are in control of your life. It's not this grandeur of mystical ideas. It's just right there. So again, that's how I feel.
Well, what religion does, or what makes religion so detrimental to me, is that on an individual level, it forces, or it not forces, it incentivizes people to not focus on solving the problems in their own life, the problems that they have in the present, because they have something to look forward to in the future. They have a heaven and an afterlife to look forward to in the future. So it doesn't really matter what's going on in my own life. I might be a terrible parent, I might be a complete fucking scumbag day to day, but don't worry, because I've got a greater cause that I'm affiliated to. And you and I have both been in we've both grown up in an environment where I think we can see that same degree of fanaticism in the woke movement, for example. Those, I made a joke when Johnny Kelly was on the podcast, and I said, like, does any of those Antifa people that are out there protesting, do they look happy to you? And he kind of laughed, and he's like, I'm not going to get into that. But it's like, he knew I was right.
That's funny.
As none of those people are happy. None of them are well adjusted. You go onto their social media profiles, every single one of them is complaining of some form of mental illness that they have. What has happened is, instead of dealing with the problems that they have and becoming well-adjusted, happy human beings, they are now latching onto something else, because Judeo-Christianity, or whatever the religion of the day is no longer relevant. They've just latched onto a different religion. They adhere to the like a set of rules and a set of to an ideology that is extremely similar to religion. And again, I grew up with that, so I know I can see it. I can spot it from a fucking mile off.
They're distracted by an idea, and it crowds all the ideas. They're just continually crowding, and they're losing space, and that's just.
But it's almost like it's a convenient distraction, because if you weren't distracted by that, and you didn't feel like I was attached to this higher cause, and again, the MAGA crowd's the same. If I weren't attached to this higher cause, then it would actually force me to confront the problems in my own life. Right. And for many of them, the idea of having to do that is intolerable. They can't deal with that.
And it's just, it creates this cycle of continual shitty life, and that's what makes up the majority of the people. And I feel maybe that's what it is. Maybe my transition, or my step in a new direction, has come with the part of the idea that I'm really just separating myself as much as I can from the modern era, and not in the sense that I'm transporting back in time, but more so I'm more, rather than because people, I notice in the modern times, they're only looking forward. They're not looking at this current thing. They're saying, if I do this now, it's going to help something then. What I'm doing now, I'm doing this because I hope to one day cause peace on earth. I hope to save starving children. I hope to this and that. But it's like, you can be somebody who goes out and says, I'm a vegan, you should stop eating meat, but they're not going to stop killing animals in a million years.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you living for now, or are you living for the time that, when you're dead, nobody's going to remember? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that I'm trying to live right now and enjoy my life now.
Well, I mean, bringing
and look at the clouds.
Bringing our conversation full circle. I mean, it comes right back to what you said about quitting drinking. I mean, you identified a problem in your own life, and you were brave enough to deal with it, and the net result in your life has been extremely positive. Again, as I said, I think a lot of these ideological zealots that I see roaming around in the world, they just simply do not have the gumption to be able to do that. And that's why they're in the position they're in. And that doom loop that gets created, one of the things that fuels the doom loop is resentment, which is why you see so many people running around, you know, going down with capitalism, this, that, and the other. You know, Reagan once said something that I thought was very, very funny, but it's very true of our modern day society. He said, "You can never see a fat man standing or a thin man standing beside a fat man without the thin man thinking that the fat man stole something to get that way." It's like no one can look at the world anymore and just be even like on a one-to-one friendship, you know, like with their friends. There's very few people that can see their friends do really well and go, fuck yes, you know, my friend is doing great.
Job,
my friend is rich. My friend is driving a cool car. I'm super proud of how they did. Everybody is trying to put, you know, everybody's trying to claw the other one down because they want to get ahead themselves.
Right.
And it's an extremely unhealthy place to be in mentally. You are destined to be miserable for the rest of your life if that's the way that you think.
Yes, I told. Yep. I agree with you.
Well, brother, it has been a pleasure as always catching up with you.
Sure.
And like I said, man, I'm so pleased with how great this record turned out. From that first time that I did the react on the news rant, and I specifically saved the song for the news rant. So if you watch that video back, that's the first time I heard the song. You know, it was awesome. I knew the rest of the record was going to absolutely fucking rip. So glad it's turned out the way that it has, and we will definitely do this again at some point down the road.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
The cool thing is, the more somebody comes on the podcast, especially the style of conversation that I have, the more fun these conversations become, because the more open you get and the more it just becomes like two buddies catching up. So
definitely. I feel the same way. I feel much more comfortable, and as you can tell, I'm not afraid to talk your ear off.
Which is good. I was about to say earlier when you said, you know, to make a long story short, I was like, no, there's been episodes that have gone on for nearly 3 hours on this show, so talk away.
Cool.
But brother, take care of yourself, and we will definitely speak again soon.
Okay, thanks. Cheers.
All right, dude. Bye-bye. Sonic Devotion to Darkness by Vredensdal off the album by the same name. Fantastic album title, fantastic album. I reviewed it on the podcast last week. I told you it's great. If you haven't listened to it yet, the link to their Bandcamp will be in the description of the podcast. So make sure that you go and check it out. And a big thanks and a shout out to Michael for his time. Always great catching up with him. This chat was kind of initially going to be another track-by-track breakdown conversation, but we just kind of derailed off into so many different topics. I just went with the flow. But yeah, great catching up with him, and it's been a lot of fun and very satisfying seeing his development and his kind of personal progression, I think, as a man and as a musician over the course of the last couple of years that I've known him, and it's really, really cool to see that reflect in his music too. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did recording it. As far as new releases go, normally around about this time of the show is when we listen to some new music, or at least when I tell you about new music I'm listening to. But I've not really had much time to do that. Work has been absolutely off the rails busy. So I am going to go back into the archives, check out a couple of records that I have missed this year, or missed talking to you about this year, and then I'll do a proper release roundup and share a few of those with you next week. In the meantime, though, if you found yourself sat alone in your car wearing a surgical mask because you were afraid of COVID at any point over the past 5 years, then it's time for you to get to stepping, because this is my weekly news rant. Hitting Metal Storm first, as always. The first news headline catching my attention is that Dååth have created a cover of Death's The Philosopher. It says here, after their recent revival, Dååth have released another new single, a cover of Death's song, The Philosopher, featuring guitarists Dan Sugarman of Ice Nine Kills and Rafael Trujillo. Guitarist Eyal Levy had this to say about the band's latest music piece, not the land's latest music piece. It's insane to think that it's been 30 years since I first saw the music video for The Philosopher on Headbangers Ball. I loved the song then, and I love it now. This is our attempt to honor Chuck's legacy and his massive contribution to extreme metal. Jesse Zuretti had this to add: Chuck and Death paving the way for future extreme metal bands. The best way to pay tribute is to play. Appreciate the sentiment, but I got to say, right before we hit play, you're treading on sacred ground covering a Death song. There's not a lot of people that can pull it off. I think my view on Chuck and on Death is reasonably storied on this podcast, so I'm not going to go into a monologue about, the fact that I think that he's one of the greatest ever on the face of the earth, and I don't think there is such a thing as a bad Death record. As a matter of fact, just I said I'm not going to go into a long monologue about it, but just to stress once again, I think that Chuck probably, left this mortal coil at the absolute apex of his creative power. I think the last two Death records were the finest two in a legacy of unbelievable music. But anyway, let's put all that aside, because, like I said, to the Dååth men, if you're gonna cover a Death record or Death song, you better come correct. So let's find out if that is indeed what has happened.
See what I say.
I mean, so far so good. I wouldn't say it's not disrespectful. You know, I was kind of over exaggerating a little bit when I was talking about the sacred ground. People must cover what they want, but it doesn't sound bad. It's not really hitting me in the feels whatsoever. The big question is whether they are about to recreate Steve DiGiorgio's fantastic fretless bass line that was used in the song. For those of you guys that know the song, if you don't, you're a disgrace. So let's get back to it. I don't know if I'm just old or what it is, but there's something about this that just it's lacking. It's lacking in soul. It's lacking in feeling to me. So we're going to go straight back to the original Philosopher, and let's hear if. Let's compare the two. So this is Death with the original version of Individual Thought Patterns, a fantastic record. And I think why I'm particularly pedantic about this song is, you know, this was without a doubt, you know, one of those records, one of those songs to me that was one of the most influential, certainly in my existence, also in my formation as a acolyte of extreme music. But anyway, yeah, let's hear what the original sounds like. Not that anybody was expecting Dååth to do a better version than this, but I mean, come on. Vocals, on point. Drums, amazing. Guitars, awesome. Just the whole vibe of the song, absolutely fucking brilliant. Just before we go into that solo, one of the things that I've always loved the most about Death's music is the fact that there is so much going on. I mean, on every single Death song, but especially that last run, Human, Individual Thought Patterns, Symbolic, and The Sound of Perseverance. It is so extraordinarily technical, but there is not ever, at any point on any of those records, in my view, a note that's out of place. Nothing. There's not like a drum roll that you think is superfluous. There's not like a bass line that you think, oh no, they're just showing off. The guitar solos are pinpoint brilliant. But yet, in spite of the fact that, one, it's so technical, two, it's so pristinely put together and crafted as a song, the amount of emotion and soul that is conveyed through these songs is just fucking unreal. And, you know, it's amplified by how incredible Chuck's ability as a guitarist was, because when he rips into those solos, I mean, just fucking unreal. So let's get back to it. I remember hearing that bass line for the first time and just being completely blown away. I'd never heard bass played like that before on an extreme metal record, and it just made me completely and utterly fall in love with Steve DiGiorgio, with his bass playing, of course. But just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So nice try, Dååth. But we appreciate the sentiment, but I'll stick with the original. Okay, next up we've got Chrome Waves. They have launched a video for their new single. It says here, a week prior to the official release of their third album, Earth Will Shed Its Skin, Americans Chrome Waves stream a music video for the newest single, Broken. Via the Bandcamp widget below, you can also give a spin to the previously released songs. We, of course, won't be listening to the Bandcamp widget, but they do have a YouTube embedded file here, so bully for us. Broken is a song, they say, that's been in our demo folder for a couple of years now, explains guitarist Jeff Wilson. For some reason, it just never fit into the track list on a proper album until now. It's definitely got the vibe of our early material, which was something we were aiming for this time. It's the perfect closer for this record. James Benson of Chrome Waves was a guest on the podcast many moons ago, like I'm talking probably teens. He was on the podcast specifically for his black metal side project that he was doing, Not, which it is a shame we've not heard more from him on that front, because Not was fucking sensational. If you go back to that record now, I think it still holds up. It sounds absolutely superb. I do enjoy it in full transparency much more than I do Chrome Waves, but because of how much I love it, I kind of give almost all of the projects that he's involved in a bit of a listen, just to hear if he's able to convey the true devilishness that I liked it not in his other music. So I've not heard anything off the new Chrome Waves. Frankly, I've not listened to any Chrome Waves records for quite a while, but let's hear what Broken sounds like. I don't know why the fuck there's no sound. Perhaps I need to skip forward for... Oh, there we go. Fucking finally. Right. That's already 2 marks off the potential score they could have achieved out of 10 for 10 seconds of fucking pointless silence. Right, let's get back to it. So far, it's taking its fucking sweet time to get going. I'm not going to lie. So I'm going to jump to minute 3. And hopefully we got some action. I'm going to have to tap out. I think it's not bad. I think if you're a fan of bands like Catatonia, I think you're going to find a lot here to like. Maybe a band like Ghostbath. I thought I like Ghostbath a bit more because there was a bit more severity in that. And when I say Ghostbath, I'm referring to the last Ghostbath record, but this one is a little timid for me. That Not record I was referring to earlier, it's called The Great Furnace, and he also put out a fucking brilliant EP that I think was just titled Not. That came out in 2018. I would actually go as far as to say that's even better than the actual full-length record. The first track on there, White Cold Death, is complete and utter brilliance. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's not bad. It's well-written music for the right audience. This is, there's plenty to be excited about here. It's just not for old Jackson. And I would dare say, be surprised if there's a lot of the Legion that enjoy it. But anyway, let's move on. We've got news here about Before the Dawn announcing their first record in 11 years. Melodic Death Metal Masters. No, can't be asked listening to that. Eternal Storm have put out their Last Refuge single. It says here, Last Refuge, the first single of the Eternal Storm's second long player, has surfaced online. It features guest vocals by the band's former vocalist, Kairion, and violin performed by Paul Rodriguez Flies. The Spaniards will share more details of the new outing in coming weeks. I'm not going to listen to that Bandcamp widget, but let's see if we can find them on YouTube. In the meantime, I've said this many times before. I know that some of the members listen to the podcast, so I'd like to address another group of Spaniards called Aversio Humanitatis. And my question to them is, where the fuck is your new album? You are way overdue for some new music. So stop being so goddamn lazy and get in the fucking recording studio. Anyway, right, I found a YouTube version of the song. It is, I should give a shout out to Transcending Obscurity, and as we know, my thoughts on that particular label is very positive. So let's hear what Last Refuge sounds like. Those vocals fucking kill. Like I was gonna say the opening bit where he's got the deeper vocal, he sounds almost like Glenn Benton there, which I like. Like it reminds me a bit of Once Upon a Cross era Glenn Benton, but then that like mid-range scream shout kind of thing that he's doing there right now. Massive kudos for that. I fucking love that. That sounds awesome. I mean, usually melodic death metal is cut short shrift by me. I'm not a big fan. It's very, very rare that I like bands that do this style of music, but I've got to give it to them. Eternal Storm are absolutely fucking smashing it with this song. I love the different vocal ranges, including the clean vocals. I think the melody sounds cool. It doesn't sound like it's just borrowed from, some obscure new wave of British heavy metal album. The production is cool. There's just an energy to the song that I really, really like. So, yeah, great stuff. I'm going to go ahead and say it. That earns a top notch. I think that's fucking cool. And well done to the Eternal Storm Gentlemen, and good on Transcending Obscurity for picking these guys up. All right, let's move on to the next one. We've got news here about Extreme, who've presented new tunes and videos. Probably the least extreme of all bands to carry that name. I think they devalued the word, because I mean, like especially in the 90s, like almost everything was, whenever they wanted to kind of repackage something, they would always call it Extreme. It would be like fucking chewing gum flavor, Peppermint Extreme. And it never meant anything. And I think they took their lead from the band Extreme. Okay, the big news. Immortal have debuted a new single. Now, the first single off of this new Immortal record was, let's be honest, it left much to be desired. It says here that with War God, the Norwegian black metal institution Immortal deliver a new single leading up to the release of their highly anticipated 10th studio album, War Against All, due on May 26th via Nuclear Blast Records. Demonaz stated about the second single, War God is the heaviest song on the album. I thought it was about time to give the fans of a track in the Tyrants again. Celtic Frost's album To Megatherion from 1986 was an inspiration to me this time. Some of its classic tracks and heavy opening riffs that developed into fast, devastating fury and tempo. I wanted to capture that feeling again, the Immortal way. Then I moved to the mountains in 2019, and I went through some of my old material and unused lyrics. War God was one of them. The title, lyric, and song ideas were originally from the early 90s and now finally immortalized on the new album. So, like I said, first, I've got a lot of love for Immortal. Again, storied throughout the history of this podcast. There's absolutely no denying that. I did not enjoy the last single. I am hoping desperately to like this one. Because Immortal they're not a name, they're not a band that I want to be disappointed by. I want to love everything that they do. So we're about to find out whether it's disappointment or whether they're about to redeem themselves. So one thing that he mentions there about discovering this, or that this song dates back, or part of the song dates back to the early 90s, I think is revealing. Because this song to me sounds like something that they would have written for either Pure Holocaust or Battles in the North. And the band would have heard it and they would have gone, fuck it, it's not good enough to fit in with those songs. They would have been correct about that, because it's not. And it just sounds to me to be very much a paint-by-numbers Immortal song. There's nothing about this that is striking me as unique, memorable, exciting. It's lacking in any kind of conviction. And even the lyrics. They're, what can you say about them? Sons of Thunder, Mighty War God, whatever, there's just nothing about them that is remarkable. And for me, when it comes to Immortal, they set their own benchmark. Their benchmark is being remarkable. Their benchmark is being the band Immortal. This does not meet that benchmark. Not by fucking any stretch of the imagination. I'm curious to know what you guys think of it, but for me, it does not cut the mustard. Maybe it changes in the next minute. We'll give it another 60 seconds. But so far, it's... we're going to have to think of an award I can dish out that's the opposite of top-notch. Maybe the backhand. This single gets the backhand this week. But let's give it another 60 seconds. Right, this one is the first official song ever on the Weekly News Rant to receive the official Into the Necrosphere backhand because this fucking stinks. It would have been fine for another band to do something like that, but not for Immortal. This, to me, there's two possible scenarios here. Either one, AI wrote the song, or two, it sounds like the sort of thing that Amon Amarth would have come up with if you said, write us a song in the vein of Immortal. I think that Abath and Demonaz need to mend fences. They need to get back together. They need to start making music together again. It seems to me like both are just kind of cut adrift without each other. Something is fucking missing because, like I said, that is just not doing it for me. Okay, moving on. The Arcane Order are streaming the first Deceiver song. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed the Arcane Order's last single. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. I must correct myself because I said that I thought at the time they were putting out their record through Metal Blade Records. It turns out they were signed to Metal Blade Records, but they are now signed to Black Lion Records, who, like Soul Cellar and SWAT Records and everyone, they're starting to make some moves, and I like those moves. So anyways, it says here, the new Arcane Order single, The First Deceiver, is out now. The Tark, or track, as it's known to the English-speaking lands, is taken from the album Distortions from Cosmogony, to be released on June the 9th, 2023, through Black Lion Records. The accompanying video was shot and produced by Hans Asmussen. High benchmark set for them for that on that first single. Let's hear if they can meet the benchmark on this one. So we'll get back to it in just a second. A couple of things I'll highlight straight from the off that I like. Music video is very cool. Again, a good example of doing something that's interesting without being cliched, without, trotting out the old trope of the old man in his fucking underpants, the OAP in his underwear running around on a beach terrified of some demonic entity. Great vocals, as per the first single. Drumming absolutely fucking sensational. I'm blown away by this drummer. He really, really is fucking first class. I would say initial impression is the song is not quite as catchy to me as that first single. That first single really kind of had that sort of epic build up, to a hook that just, it sinks itself into your brain and just does not let go. This one, I'm not quite getting the same vibes. I'm liking the song, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily on par with the initial single. But you never know. The song is 7 minutes long, so much or a lot still to happen before we can properly make a judgment. We'll give it another 60 seconds and see where we land. Yeah, good stuff. Not as good as the first single, but I'm still looking forward to hearing the full new record. So we'll see what it sounds like when it comes out, and of course we'll give it a proper review on Into the Necrosphere. The next single that we've got to listen to is another new track by Tudor. It says ahead of the release of their new album, Hellfigure, out on June the 23rd, 2023 via Season of Mist, black metal horde Tudor now share a visualizer video for their new single or opening track. The song, it seems, is called Iron Beast. Loved the previous single. Let's hear what the new one sounds like. So, Tudor are doing on this song basically what they've always done. And yet somehow, this is brilliant, but the new Immortal is nonsense. And I honestly, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, aside from the fact that there just seems to be far more conviction from these guys in delivering this music than there is in that Immortal song. Quite what is creating that, I don't know. Maybe it was better captured in the studio. Maybe these guys just are still truly dark, necro, and grim. I mean, you definitely have to be to do a song like that. But they're just, without a shadow of a doubt, to me, sounds like something that is just way more convincing, and certainly speaks to me a lot more than Immortal on this song than on this song than does Immortal. So yeah, I'm loving this. I think this new album is going to be fucking brilliant, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd go as far as to say this might be some of the best Tudor material I've ever heard. And I actually have the new record lying in my my inbox. I've not listened to the whole thing yet. I think I'm going to have to change that. As I've said to you guys before, normally I don't really spend too much time listening to promos. I much prefer waiting for the high-res files to come onto Cobalt, and I can hear it properly. I can listen to it on the hi-fi and stuff, rather than listening to 320 kilobyte MP3s. But yeah, there's some that I'll make the exception for. I actually have the new cattle decapitation in my inbox too. And I mean, those 2 singles they've released off it so far have been magnificent. So, but anyways, let's get back to Iron Beast. And whenever there's an explosion in a black metal song, to me, that's almost an immediate 10 out of 10. So I think this is worthy of top notch. Now, you guys will perhaps wonder what Bill Maher, comedian and host of Real Time, has in common with Tudor. Now, hear me out. This actually made me think of something I've been meaning to share with you guys. I've been talking over the course of the last week about what we can do to start pushing back against the cancel mobs and against people who think that it is within their purview and it is their right to get bands barred from playing certain venues, banned from certain cities, etc. And we know it's happened with Marduk. They've attempted it with Mayhem. They've certainly done it many, many times with Nas and the guys in Ecclese. Like I said, we need to start taking a principled stand against this, or it is going to get exponentially worse. And in keeping with that, I heard Bill Maher talk about something recently on this past week's episode of Real Time that I wanted to share with you guys, because I believe there's a lesson for us within this example that is quite instructive. So to set the scene, the segment that he was doing was his new rules segment, and he was doing a spoof awards show called the Cojones Awards, where he was talking about different people and companies that had taken a stand against the woke mobs, and he was giving them awards for it. The company in question here is Trader Joe's. Let's listen.
Trader Joe's, who for years have been selling a line of ethnically themed products, trading on the name Joe. For example, they have Trader Jose's beer. So, of course, one teenager on Twitter heard the word Jose and said it was racist, and then there was a petition, and then Trader Joe's management did the right thing. They burnt down all their stores and killed themselves. No, they didn't. They said, fuck off, you oversensitive little shits. Get a life and a sense of humor, and released this statement. We disagree that any of these labels are racist, and we do not make decisions based on petitions. You see how easy it is?
So this is the lesson that I take from this. When I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, I was saying part of where this has to start is with promoters and venues taking a stand against people that try and get concerts cancelled. And I thought to myself, if we look at the Trader Joe's response there to the Trader Jose outrage, we disagree that any of these labels are racist and we do not make decisions based on petitions. Imagine, what would the cancel mobs in our scene do if a tour promoter or if a venue simply turned around and said, we don't believe that Marduk supports, or we disagree with the fact that Marduk, we disagree with the assertion that Marduk supports white supremacy, We welcome anybody who would like to watch the show to join us on, date X. For those that don't enjoy Marduk's music, we will have a host of other bands over the course of the coming months that you may find more to your liking. The end. Or, we disagree with anybody's, we disagree with cancelling a band's performance because of few people that don't like their music or that don't like what they sing about. If you don't wish to attend, please don't. And I think that if there are more venue managers or venue owners, more promoters that do this sort of thing, then I think the next step in pushing back against this nonsense is for all of us to start very openly supporting those venues and those promoters. And actually, I would say also for bands to start trying to book as many of their tours through those promoters and at those venues as they possibly can. And the more we do that, I think the more these voices are going to be marginalized and the less we're going to have to fucking hear it. Because I like I said, if we leave it to run riot the way that it's going right now, it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And so I think that, as I've said before, I think intent almost certainly means something. I'm not saying any of this from a place of, wishing anybody any ill, but I disagree that somebody has the right to tell me what I can and can't listen to. I'm a 43-year-old man. I pay taxes. I abide by the law of the land. Much as I don't agree with paying the exorbitantly high taxes that I have to pay, but I do it anyway. But I'm afraid you're not going to impose your moral philosophy on me to your heart's content, whether or not you are trying to impose your gender ideology on me, whether or not you're trying to impose your net zero zealotry on me, or whether or not you're trying to impose what I can and can't listen to. I disagree with you fundamentally, and if that means that it's best for us to not engage because you hold so strongly to your beliefs that you can't find any sort of compromise, then so be it. But for us to live peacefully in a society together, we're going to have to come to a truce, because there's not going to be any compromise on my side, just as there is clearly no compromise on your side. So, I thought I would share that with you guys. Got to say about Bill Maher, I have been sharply critical of him on this very segment in years gone by. But I'd say over the last 12 months or so, that dude he's come back swinging. He's putting out some really good content at the moment. I think that Real Time currently is absolutely on fire. So if you've given up on listening to it or watching it, I would suggest make sure that you go back to it, because it is pretty cool. And I quite like his Club Random podcast as well. He had Lars Ulrich on there recently, and I thought it was a pretty good conversation, pretty interesting. All right, anyway, let's move on. Midnight Odyssey, live debut at Cosmic Void Festival, followed by select European shows. Actually, funnily enough, we spoke about Ecclese. I think they played Cosmic Void last year. It says here, after the announcement that Midnight Odyssey would perform live for the first time ever at Cosmic Void Festival in London, one question remained. Was this going to be a one-off, or was it a signal for a new era, including more live performances? Well, at least Danes will get the opportunity to see the band live as well, as Disparted announced yesterday that they will perform on the 21st of September at the Spilles de Tet Stengende in Copenhagen. He also revealed that keyboards on these shows will be performed by Timothy James Tim Yatras, aka Sorrow from Austere and Germ. The rest of the lineup remains unknown so far. I cannot recall actually ever listening to Midnight Odyssey. So we move on. Celeste are touring Europe and Canada. That Celeste record, I think it came out last year. Fucking brilliant. Very overlooked, but I think it's because of the time that it came out. And if memory serves me correctly, it also came out on the same weekend as Immolation, which is never a good thing. You're always going to be outshone by Immolation. Okay, let's see. The Ocean have launched a new single. Yawn to that shit. Botanist debut, Celentrope track. Plant-based avant-gardists Botanist have sown the dreamy title track of Celentrope as the final single taken from their forthcoming album, Celentrope, which comes out on May the 19th. Plant-based is I have a reflexive dislike for anything that is remotely plant-based. Plant-based sandwich, plant-based meat, plant-based fucking anything. However, if I'm not mistaken, Chelsea Murphy of Kylie Calling and Dawn of Ouroboros does vocals for Botanist as well. And if nothing else, because we know my thoughts on the new Dawn of Ouroboros music, I really like her voice. So I'm going to give this a listen by virtue of the fact that we might hear a good vocal performance. All right. That's 55 seconds that I'm not going to get back in my life. And I've just checked now. It seems I was wrong. I don't think that Chelsea's actually in this band. But we're invested in this shit already. So let's jump to the halfway mark of the song and let's hear whether he has traded in his bamboo ukulele that he's that he's playing currently for something that's more befitting of Into the Necrosphere. Apparently not, so go fuck yourself, Botanist. Let's move on. Bloodstar debut new streaming new album in full. Bloodstar. Soulstophère are entering the studio next month. Quite like Soulstophère, and I've liked the episodes that the chap from Soulstophère has done with Alan Averill over on Alan Averill's podcast. By the way, I've not forgotten about doing that episode yet. I actually, now that I think about it, I need to reach out to him and get that set up, because another chat with us would be, or between the two of us, I think would be great. Nocturnal Breed, of course, the band featuring the mighty Swartalv, a fucking absolute badass of a man who's been on the podcast, did one of, I think, the very best episodes you'll ever hear on Into the Necrosphere. They have just announced that they're going to be releasing a new record entitled Carry the Beast, and that's going to be released through Dark Essence Records. Very much looking forward to the album, and I'm going to reach out to Swartalv and make sure that he and I have got another chat in the diary for when that album comes out. Okay, right. Let's hear if these guys are any good. So death metal purveyors from Poland, Pandrador, announced the release of a new full-length offering titled Sior. It'll be released through Pagan Records on May the 26th, 2023. The 9-piece music effort was mixed and mastered by Philip Heinrich Haluka at Heinrich House Studios. Alongside unveiled details, check out a new music video for the first streaming single called Vergelmir. Poland immediately gets my interest peaked, so I'm curious to hear what Pandrador sounds like. This will be my very first time. I'm a Pandrador virgin, so let's give it a spin. Concern immediately because the music video is showing a beach roamer, not quite in his underpants just yet, but he's certainly struggling to scale those rocks, or she, I don't really know whether that's a man or a woman. And even though it looks very cold, they're walking around in flip-flops. So just before the music starts, clearly things at this point of the music video aren't going well for them. So even though the song is taking its sweet time to get up and running, we certainly entered Rift City when that kicked off. That sounded very, very, very good. Very hard hitting. Love that production as well. Like really meaty, and it kind of had that warm tone that you like, or at least that I like. But a lot of beef to that production. So yeah, liking that very much so far. Now, I think the song is 7 minutes long, so I think this is one where I'd probably end up listening through the whole song if you left me, or you left me to it, but I will be marking May the 26th down as a date to watch, because that sounds very promising. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to give it the top-notch sign just yet, or the top-notch award just yet, but it certainly sounds like it's got a fucking boatload of promise. All right, so... news about Trey Azagtoth of Morbid Angel. Unfortunately, it says here that he recently collapsed on stage during a Tampa concert. It says Morbid Angel guitarist Trey Azagtoth collapsed on stage during the band's concert last night, and at the time this was published, this was Friday, April the 21st, in Tampa, Florida. Video of the incident, which apparently happened during the fifth song of Morbid Angel's set at the Orpheum in Azagtoth's hometown, shows the 58-year-old musician, whose real name is George Emmanuel III, struggling to stay on his feet while performing before he's helped to the back of the stage by a couple of roadies. After a short break, Morbid Angel bassist vocalist Steve Tucker told the crowd that Trey injured himself before he and the other members of the group performed one more song and then ended the show. I think we're going to call it a night, man, Steve told the crowd. Without the leader, I apologize. I love all you motherfuckers. Thank you for coming. Hopefully Trey's all right. We'll see you all again real soon, man. You have a good fucking night. Let's check out the video. I have seen the video, and I've got to say, I think there's two things for us to take away from this. One is looking at what happens when Trey collapses. Two is hearing Steve's reaction to a very unfortunate and I would imagine for him at least a quite unique situation. So I'm gonna hit play on this video. For those of you guys not watching on YouTube, I'll try and describe things as I go along. So at this point of the video, I mean, the band sound pretty good, I have to say. Steve sounds like a fucking absolute beast, but I mean, you wouldn't expect any less from him. And Trey is kind of leaning to his left in a very weird way, but I mean, he tends to kind of sway and move around on stage. Obviously, the band aren't aware of anything that's going on, and you can't see the audience, so you can't, obviously don't know whether the audience is spotting anything. So yeah, I'll hit play again. So he kind of seems to be in the process of collapsing backwards, and the guys on stage come and grab him, and then as they're pulling him away, he seems to kind of pull on a cord that's hanging down the side of the stage. I saw a couple of comments on the on Blabbermouth's Facebook page where one guy said he's an EMT, and he said that looked to him like a stroke. Another person says it looks like he was having a seizure. My immediate thoughts were, it's Tampa, it's hot as fuck. Maybe he's just dehydrated. It's very humid there, it's very hot. You're on stage with those lights beating down on you, and let's address the elephant in the room. I don't think it's any great secret that Trey has had some issues with alcohol. There was that interview that was released a couple of weeks ago where a guy interviewed him before a show, and I mean, he seemed pretty out of it. So it could very well be this is the end result of day drinking, dehydration, and kind of hot stage lights and just being exhausted playing, very physical style of music. The man's 58 years old. Let's just give it a few more seconds and see if there's anything else we can see from the video. Yeah, and Steve kind of looks to his right, sees his fellow Morbid Angel guitarist, and sort of shrugs his shoulders, not quite knowing what's going on. And then when the song ends, obviously the lights comes back on. He's gone backstage to hear what's cracking. And to me, and you guys let me know in the comments what you think of his response here, but to me, he sounds pretty shaken, to be honest.
I love you too, bro. Here, have a pick. Trey's injured himself, man. We're gonna take a couple minutes, all right? Just give us just a minute, man. Let's see how Trey's doing.
You guys got this!
You guys want us to keep going? Hopefully he'll be back in a minute, man.
It could be that when he collapsed, he kind of fell, maybe hit his shoulder, or maybe he hurt his wrist, or hurt his arm or something like that. But yeah, you can definitely. I definitely feel like Steve sounds a little bit shaken there. It could just be it could be the situation, or the scenario. But it's not it must be a very, very difficult spot to be in, having to have that conversation with an audience. Tickets to see them, I don't believe would be cheap. I mean, I don't know what the cost of the tickets were, but they're a reasonably high-profile band. From everything I've seen, it looked like there was a reasonably sized audience there. We'll carry on with the video.
Day of suffering.
Anyway, so he plays. They play Day of Suffering, and then I think he just says he doesn't feel comfortable doing Morbid Angel songs without Trey. So yeah, difficult one. No one knows what's going on. There's absolutely no point in making any judgments about it. I just hope that Trey is all right. Again, Morbid Angel is a hugely influential band on me, and I think Trey, as a guitarist, is one of the very best of the best. I mean, there's no getting around it. But alcohol and substance abuse is a fucking terrible thing. I truly hope that that's not the case here, and that's not a demon that he's necessarily wrestling with. But then at the same time, in some ways, you almost do hope that it's that, because at least he can get treatment for it, and this is not something a lot more serious. So I don't think at the point that I'm recording this, there's been any further updates. I just hope whatever it was, he's okay. He's feeling better. And that honestly, I think whether Morbid Angel postponed the rest of the tour, that's irrelevant at this point. I think he needs to get the rest and or the help and the treatment that he needs. But yeah, big and very surprising bit of news there. But again, I mean, this is as we say, it's he's 58 years old. So actually, now that I'm looking at further down the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, it says here, Morbid Angel's Trey Azagtoth was dehydrated and was suffering from a back injury when he collapsed, his mother says. So there has been an update. I stand corrected, and it seems like my initial guess might have been correct. So it says here, Morbid Angel's Trey Azagtoth was dehydrated and was suffering from back injury when he collapsed. Morbid Angel guitarist Trey Azagtoth was dehydrated and was suffering from a back injury when he collapsed on stage during the band's concert last night, his mother says. Blah, blah. Does she say anything? Yeah. She says, I would like to say thank you, first of all, for your well wishes for my son Trey. As it appears, Trey was totally dehydrated. His back issue was due to him slipping while going down the stairs of the bus, and he hit his back on one of the stairs. They have decided to go ahead and have a show tonight, and I'm just hoping and praying that all goes well. I had a message from Dan. He said that Trey got rest last night and was up and around and seemed to be ready. I will continue to watch anything I can find out about tonight. When he returns home tomorrow, I know he'll need rest, but also will need to get some medical help. Again, thank you so much for your concern. He loves his fans. All right, so hopefully it's a case of, he needs to get his back taken care of, and make sure that he gets those electrolytes in the next time they play in Florida. But like I said, he's 58 years old. This is very physically taxing music. For a dude like you think of the guys like Cannibal Corpse. I mean, Alex Webster must surely be around about the same age as Trey. For him to be on stage, playing with the intensity and the energy that he does, that's not in everybody's purview. Many of us, grew up with our parents, being in their sort of mid 50s, early 60s when we were in our teens or late teens. I couldn't imagine my dad playing this kind of music at 45, let alone 55, or even worse, 65. So, okay, we move on. It says here, Megadeth's Dave Mustaine, we really want to play and entertain and be the biggest metal band in history, which again is revealing because the fact that they're not the biggest metal band in history and never will be probably explains quite a lot of his bitterness. Former Death members Rick Ross and Terry Butler are planning to work on new music with Left to Die. I'm not opposed to that idea. I really like Left to Die. I really like the Death for All project as well. So it says here, Left to Die, the new band featuring classic Death members Terry Butler, formerly of Massacre, and Rick Ross, also of Massacre, ex-Massacre, have paired with gruesome founders Matt Harvey and Gus Rios recently completed its European tour. Left to Die performs Death's classic Leprosy album in its entirety, along with cuts from Scream Bloody Gore. Asked in a new interview with Germany's Mosh Pit Passion how he and Rick approached Left to Die without making it appear like a cash grab, Terry said, as transcribed by blabmouth.net, we approach it like Rick wrote quite a bit of material on Leprosy. Rick was around in the demo days, and a lot of those riffs are also on Death's debut album, Scream Bloody Gore. Rick and I joined Death right as Scream Bloody Gore came out, so we have history with that album. We're approaching this as a band. We're eventually going to put together some new music. That's our game plan. Yeah, I've got no issue with that whatsoever. I wonder whether the name Mosh Pit Passion, though, came from the very infamous moment in Autopsy's Mosh Pit at the Milwaukee Metal Fest last year. That ghastly woman who was responsible for that and the dude who participated both need to be in jail as far as I'm concerned. Let's see what else. Marty Friedman doesn't have any regrets about failed reunion of Megadeth's Rust in Peace lineup. Chris Cornell, early 1990s era rock icon statue coming from Knucklebones. I might actually have the founder of Knucklebones on the podcast at some point in the next couple of weeks. I was approached about that as a possibility, and I figured, what the hey, it might make an interesting or a different type of conversation. Maybe one we'll use as a Friday surprise. So keep your eyes peeled, Nick. You might get a Friday treat at some point in the not too distant future. System of a Down's Chop Suey surpasses 1 billion streams on Spotify. I'm going to go on record right now saying I'd sooner listen to Limp Bizkit than listen to System of a Down again. Never would have thought to say that maybe 10, 15 years ago, but I spoke about evolving as a person and as a man. I've evolved to dislike that band so much that I listened to Nookie before I listened to fucking Chop Suey or anything that shit band wrote ever again. And actually, as a side of random observation, I think that those Woodstock 99 documentaries have probably helped Limp Bizkit experience something of a resurgence in their career. I mean, I say I'd rather listen to them. I'm not exactly a fan, so I'm not shilling for them in any way, shape, or form. But I noticed there was a video that came up randomly on YouTube the other day where they showed like a recent show that Limp Bizkit did in London. It was at the OVO Arena in Wembley. It's fucking packed. And not only is it packed, the audience were losing their shit. I would never in a million years have thought Limp Bizkit in 2023 would still be that popular. But people still love them. And the most interesting thing was the songs that people were responding to most were their cover of Thieves and Break Stuff. The two songs used on all of those documentaries or accompanied by perhaps the most finger wagging from the talking heads on those documentaries. So I don't think that's a coincidence. Nikki Six says producer Bob Rock is bringing out the best in Motley Crue in the studio. Typically, it used to be the producer Crack Rock that used to bring out the very best of Motley Crue in the studio. It says here, Suicidal Tendencies part ways with drummer Brandon Pertzborn announces replacement. Jesus, they go through drummers like fucking Liz Taylor went through husbands. And then very exciting news, Dee Snider's first fictional novel, Frats, is about to be released. So we'll wrap up with this one. It says here, Twisted Sister singers Dee Snider's first fictional novel, Frats, will be released on May the 22nd via Red Penguin Books. Based on true events, Frats is said to be a 70s period piece and coming-of-age story that's all about shock horror, toxic masculinity, and growing up in a very toxic environment and how it affects people. Frats synopsis. When young Bobby Kovacs unexpectedly moves with his parents to Baldwin, Long Island, the high school hallways of 1972 prove to be littered with boys of all shapes and sizes, desperate for one thing and one thing only: to belong. As he ventures ever deeper into the jungle of battling brotherhoods or self-proclaimed frats, hazing ceremonies, broken promises, and his own sense of self lead Bobby down the dark path of joining forces with what he fears the most in order to go on. But how far will he go, and who is he willing to hurt as he fights to survive? That sounds exactly like something a fucking miserable, a miserable, moany 26-year-old blue-haired, non-binary fool would write. Not anything that I wouldn't expect from him. And what a surprise that he taps into the old toxic masculinity trope, which, I mean, yes, it exists, but is it massively overblown in current lexicon? Without a fucking shadow of a doubt. I think the true toxic masculinity is coming from the people who condemn masculinity. And on that note, my friends, I'm going to wrap it up for this week. It also sadly brings me to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Remember to tune in next week. I'll be talking to Justin Coleman of Kriegsgrav about their new record and about a host of other topics. And I will be doing a release rundown, another installment of the news rant, and we are going to have ourselves a fucking wonderful time. In the meantime, I hope that whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is that you are, you're staying safe, you're staying healthy. I've been talking about these guys so much that I felt it almost rude not to play one of their songs. So I'm going to finish off this week's episode with a track by the band Cobalt. In my opinion, alongside Tombs, the very best of the best that US black metal has ever offered us. This is the title track of their 2009 record, Jinn. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next Tuesday.